little bit to the left, a little left, get to the right. Okay, perfect. Okay.
Is this?
That's better.
This is starting out so well.
So the element that I'm talking about from Lencioni is anonymity, and how do we make sure that our volunteers feel like they're known and that they're not flying under the radar. There are so many things throughout a ministry year that can and will drain us, but all of those things will not cause a volunteer to not come back if they're known. If we spend the time getting to know our volunteers, knowing about their lives, using the huddle as that, using time after small group to do that, and getting them so that they know that we know who they are. I was going to talk about 2 points of this with students and volunteers, but focus on the volunteers because that is our ministry, to empower the volunteers. Our volunteers will not feel fulfilled in their roles if they're not known. If they feel like they come and their leader gives that, a weekly email, but then when we're face to face with them, we're more concerned about their role and the numbers than we are about them. And that was something that was probably my favorite part of serving last year, was the huddle and getting to talk to my coaches and hear about their weeks, hear my small group leaders and hear about their days, hear about their lives, and getting to know really fun things about them, even from the kids. Like, that was one thing that was really challenging to me, was when I spent time with the kids of my small group leaders and getting to hear what they knew about my leaders. I wanted to get to know them. I think one really good way that we can know our volunteers is by knowing who they serve. And that's something that worked really well for me last year, was I spent time sitting in on all of my small group leaders' groups so that I could know their kids by name, know who the kids were that they were constantly having to give redirection to, and who the kids that were a little bit quieter, and getting to know them and hanging out with them in hang time. So getting to know the areas of people that our volunteers serve is one way that we can make them feel known, because we can directly talk to them about the kids that they're serving or the volunteers that they're working with. Where am I? Another huge component of this anonymity piece is not just going through the job statement in their binders with them, but getting to know what part of that job roles and things that they do in their job that they're really good at, and encouraging them and empowering them to exploit it and just live it out fully, just fuel it constantly. Encourage them to foster situations in their groups to use those strengths. And then the last piece that I will chat about quickly is just needing to understand what makes that volunteer tick. That's kind of, we can look at our volunteers as kind of a generic person that we're trying to recruit, but realizing that everyone has something that they're super passionate about, a strength that they're really good at, and getting to know that will make them feel known. If you know that one thing about them, they will feel known, they will feel empowered, they will feel like they have a sense of purpose, which is getting into the next component more. But I would like, because my area is more small groups, and I know how that works, but I would like to you guys to talk a little bit more about how that plays out, how anonymity plays out in your areas on this team, and how we can serve our leaders better to make them feel known, and how that can impact their roles on our team.
Last year, this Lencioni guy at the summit last year, he really promoted a book last year. It was called The Advantage, and it's really a great book that deals with organizational health, and it really focused on unhealthy organizations. And one of the chapters that was so perfect and kind of fits this, one of the middle chapters, now I can't find it, there it is, stooping to greatness. Stooping to greatness. And I think sometimes we have to make sure that as leaders, we have to envision that leadership sometimes means get down on your knees and get in the dirt, and, work on picking up the garbage, work on modeling what the right behaviors are and stuff. But for this segment, I'm supposed to focus on irrelevance. which when I saw this, Nate sends the email and I'm bristling immediately because I'm oppositionally defiant also, okay? And I'm bristling because I want to get rid of the first part of the word. Why? Irrelevance drives me nuts. I want relevance. So how do we emphasize relevance for our people? And years ago with FCA, as a huddle coach, I got a book from the state director. It was called Search for Significance. And that title has been something that I've just used in my head all these years, is by a guy named McGee. And that idea of searching for significance. So our people, no matter what they do, have to recognize, and we have to help them recognize what they're doing is relevant, significant. And as we go back to the question we talked about in our small group a little while ago, the concept is, what is God up to? Okay, you may be just at the check-in, okay, and kids are coming in, and you have no clue what's going on in their world right there. Some 15-year-old kid comes in, and you're the first friendly face they've seen all day. And you're thinking about, gee, I didn't get home to make supper for my 7th grader, what am I going to do? Okay, your significance sometimes is more than we even imagine it is. The sentence that comes from Lencioni this week: if you think that your job doesn't make a difference for anyone, you will be miserable. So let's get rid of that concept of irrelevance and recognize everything we do is relevant. Whether you're checking in somebody, whether you're a small group leader, whether you're providing food for the volunteers who are coming in to eat, whether you're in the band, everything is so relevant. And our job should be as encouragers to help people see that. Another statement: everyone has a desire to make a difference, and it is our job as leaders to show them that what they are doing makes a difference. Probably the most important job that we do in my role here, but also in my working world. I want people to feel comfortable in themselves. I want to help people feel encouraged to do and to try and to explore and to imagine that what they're doing matters. And everything they do matters. Term that's out there a lot is what matters most. I struggle with that too. I bristle with that because everything matters most. How can somebody matter most, or how can something matter mostest? Doesn't work. Everything matters. Everything we do matters every day. So when we're here on Wednesday nights and we're working with kids, no matter what that role is, or if a director working with coaches, or any other role within our Wednesday nights, everything matters as significantly as everything else. I think this is a strength of mine, but let me fall on my own sword a little bit. One thing that I feel that a gift, that God has given me is that I think I'm a pretty good encourager. I help people feel good about what they're doing because I value what they're doing, and I'm kind of in awe. I'm in awe of Alex's emails. I'm in awe of how John works with a small group. I'm in awe of how David has organized, herds cats and all the different parts of the organizational aspect of a Wednesday night. I consider that a strength, but let's go beyond that, because sometimes that's not halfways as important as what you're accomplishing. And that irrelevance, get rid of the word. Sorry, Lencioni, he's wrong. Let's talk about relevance. And the people who are in this room and the people who are working on Wednesday nights, they're doing so much. We have to just keep focusing on what their relevance are. Last point, okay? Sorry, I'm way off track, but it's my time, so I can. Okay, at the State High School League, which runs all high school sports and activities, okay, a new curriculum has been started just on August 1st. For all new coaches, all certification is going to be focused on a concept called Inside Out Coaching. It's a book written by a pastor from out east who used to be a pro football player. And the idea is what matters there is the transforming of young people into young adults who provide for their community. If you win a few games at the same time, well, good for you. It's not what matters most. So the 4 questions that all of our training statewide, and then what I'm doing with my own coaching staff, and you can see how they fit in here, so bear with me. So in my world, why do you coach? Why do you coach the way you coach? what's it feel like to be coached by you, and what's your definition of success? I look at those 4 questions, I see that as something that I can use with our small group leaders here. Why are you a small group leader? What's it like to be small grouped by you? And what's your definition of success? And as we do that, people recognize when they start answering that first question, why do you coach? Why do you small group? Why do you park cars? Why do you make food? Why do you provide? Why do you clean? When you answer that, you suddenly find the relevancy of what you're doing. And I thought about when you sent me this, Nate, that combination platter of the concept of, okay, if I'm supposed to talk about irrelevance, but I'm oppositionally defiant, I'm going to talk about relevance. And then if we're going to talk about relevance, I go back to what we're doing at the high school league level across the state and with my own staff. Why do you coach? Why do you coach the way you coach? What's it feel like to be coached by you? And what's your definition of success? And if those are the words, those ideas, those questions get answered by a small group leader, my goodness. That answers why they're doing what they're doing, and suddenly relevancy becomes so obvious. I have no...
Maybe sing along with it. Okay, so in measurement was, when he talked about it, it was kind of confusing at first. And but before I dive into that, one of the things that I think about, growing up, my family always came to me to troubleshoot electronic stuff. So computers, phones or whatever. Most of it was computer stuff. So if the computer got stuck or the computer had a virus or they couldn't get it booted, I'd be the go-to. I still am the go-to guy. And almost without fail, the question I need to ask is, have you rebooted your computer recently? And almost without fail, they haven't. And once they do, it fixes the problem. So once I heard from Lencioni about measurement, it was kind of like one of those reboots where I'm like, duh, it's so simple. Reboot the computer, do this. And so Lencioni gives this idea of kind of rebooting our ministries with this idea of giving measurable tasks for people. And I want to give you a classic example. So we had the Ground Zero Summer Takeover. I fell into a position of point, garbage man, whatever, assignment guy. So we would literally have dozens of people coming in and saying, I didn't get a chance to pre-register for volunteering, but I'm here. I'm background checked, I'm safe, And they were all safe, it was great. But they hadn't pre-registered, so we didn't have a job assignment for them. So what I would do is I'd say, okay, I need you to stand right here and welcome students and make them feel important. Now, as the program director, I'm thinking I gave them vision, I gave them direction, and I gave them a task that, if any of you know, like standing there and giving a high five, watching for blood, watching for fights, watching for fires, whatever, whatever it is, like having adult bodies is super important. But what I didn't give them was vision or ownership. Now, if I would have gone to them and said, hey, here's the thing, okay, I need you to stand right here, and I need you to let those kids feel loved and welcomed. Okay, got it? That's your task, right? That's a task. But now if I go to Leanne and say, okay, what do you think would be the win here? Right? So if I ask the question and let her take ownership of what a win is for her within the confines of making students feel welcome, say, well, I'm going to give a high five to 10 kids. I'm going to try to get them to physically make physical high five contact with me. Okay, well, that's something you can control. And so this idea of measurement, of measurement, is that if we don't let people have ownership, if we don't have people have that ability to have a measurable, quantifiable thing, that a task that they can take ownership of, then they'll feel irrelevant and anonymous, and they'll be out of there. Okay? Because I can assign people to welcome students, but often we'll find this, that the greeters will stand there and say, I'm just a body, and there's 5 other bodies, and we're all sitting here smiling, and that they don't understand how important that is. But then if I turn to them and I let them choose what they feel like is a win within the context, and it becomes a dialogue, but within the context of what their position is, so they know that the position is to welcome and engage the students. But now if I let them take a piece of ownership and say, okay, I'm going to do what I can to get as many high schools out of kids' mouths. So when they come in, it's not just, hey, how you doing? But, hey, I'm David. What high school are you from? Centennial. Cool. What high school are you from? Forsyth. Okay, that's something they can do to try to get a reaction out of it. And now that's a different piece of a nugget that they can feel that ownership with and that they can measure, and it's on them. So now as a leader, I can go back to them and say, okay, hey, Leanne, you said you wanted to give as many high fives as you can. How many did you get today? I got 50. Okay, how about next week? Let's see if you can do 60. If she doesn't lose, right? But now all of a sudden, Leanne has her own little personal agenda within the confines of what we want her to do, and now all of a sudden, the ownership level is just transformed all over the place. So for me, as a program director, my goal obviously is to know what everybody's tasks, goals, or assignments are that they volunteered for, that they signed up for. And my job is to remind them of that. But now if I go to them and say, okay, so now with our check-in team, yes, you need to check them in. And what's a win for you? What's a win for you if you're checking in people? Well, I want to try to do it in under a minute. Okay, can you control that? That's the question we need to, can we always control if they can do that? So then we want to try to boil it down to what do they feel is a win, and can they control it? Those are the two big key factors that we want to do within that confines of it. So when we can help our leaders, our volunteer key leaders, understand what a win is, and they can take ownership of it, game changer. So I was really excited about this piece. So that's my...
That's great.
2 cents.
I just want to close by encouraging you guys. I feel like these three things and this amazing guest experience are things that we could come back to almost every week. 1 week you focus on relevance, the next week you focus on measurement, the next week you focus on helping them be known. And we can just keep rotating these, because if we stay focused on these, they're going to feel like what they're doing matters, and the amazing guest experience is what's going to flow out of that, because we are giving them a great experience in the way that we're relating to them. So that's why I wanted to hit on those three things. And one last thing that I want to talk about for coaches is, I know sometimes it can be kind of nebulous. Even if you read in the books that I gave you, it's kind of a big job description of what you need to know, of here's your role. And for me, what a lot of that role comes down to is relational time. And your role is a little different. A lot of our leaders, their relational time is on Wednesday. But you have kind of a limited relational time on Wednesday, and then your leaders are doing what they're supposed to be doing with the students. And so here's what I want to encourage you guys to think about is some goals for you relationally this year when you have your 6 to 8 leaders or whatever it is on your team. That it would start weekly, that you are communicating with them in some way, shape, or form through email and the huddle every week. That they're getting some interaction with you, and keep those emails short. Don't feel like they have to be long. Don't feel like they have to be this big, long thing. Now, for some of you, especially on the small group leader side, there is more of a need for that to be a longer email. But at times, don't hesitate just to send them a quick email and say, hey, remember, this is why you matter. Hey, remember, I want to know you. Anything I can pray for today. Whatever it may be. Again, those 3 categories are great things to hit on as you're sending out those emails, and then just making sure they have the information they need to know from what you get from your director. And so passing that on, and then every week, being present for your huddles, being on time. I really want us to work on even being a little early to huddle time so that we're making a great first impression for our leaders as they're walking through the door. What we don't want to have is when they come to dinner or they come to the huddle and they kind of walk around and then they go sit by themselves and they feel like, well, nobody's greeting me. We as coaches and directors are the ones who are setting that tone for the night by how we invite them into huddle, invite them into dinner time. Now, I know sometimes your schedule is not going to allow for that. That's totally understandable. But if at all possible, let's really be present at huddle. And by the time they come to sit down, we're ready to go. We're not trying to get our bearings. We've already got our bearings so that when 5:30 or 6:15 arrives or whatever your huddle dinner time is, you're ready to fire. So that's kind of the weekly relational goals. And then monthly, I really want to encourage you, whoever you're leading, whether it's team leads or whether it's small group leaders, to try to get a 10-minute check-in with them. Now that could be between services, that could be a phone call, but like a dialogue, not necessarily an email. And in that you're striving to be an encourager, a listener, and a challenger. That's kind of in your book, so that we're constantly trying to listen, encourage, and challenge. And so in that conversation, just to say, here's one thing I see you doing really well. Encourage them. Check in and listen. Is there anything that you need from me to do your job well? And then challenge. What are your goals for this next month? What do you want to get better at? Or what's something you want to build on? And get that sense of how they want to move forward and grow. And it could be talking about this amazing guest experience. It could be relational goals that they have. And then follow up. That next month, be like, okay, I'll be checking in. I'll be praying for you on that. because I know for me, I always have great intentions. I think a lot of our leaders have great intentions to be great leaders, but then there isn't much follow through because they don't have someone just kind of holding them to the fire a little bit. Not in a big brother way, but in a, hey, okay, you want to set that agenda and I want to help you accomplish it. Does that make sense? So even just getting in that mode of helping them set goals and doing that 10-minute check-in whenever it works, go to a service together, whatever works. And then 2 times a year hitting a one-on-one with that team. So in the fall sometime, and the earlier the better. So if you can hit something in September, October, that's the best to establish that relational bond that we need to be able to do a lot of these things. So to try to hit that a one-on-one for an hour, maybe you meet in between a service, maybe you meet after a Wednesday night. I had a lot of one-on-ones after Wednesday night got done, and I know for Rev people that was like 9 to 10 o'clock, but that worked in their schedule, that worked in my schedule. It's just a one-time thing or twice a year, and so utilize that time. Hang out at Applebee's or whatever it might be, but try to get one in the fall and then one in the winter, spring. And again, that's just a time to go even deeper on what are your goals, how can I be challenging you, and how can I be listening to you. So you'll see that more developed in your book, but I just wanted to give those as kind of a benchmark, as a goal, and some you're going to hit that some months and some you're not, but that's something to strive for, just so we have some clarity on that. So I gave you the binders. We went through and edited those and simplified them. I really encourage you, especially in those books, there's a lot of great information that can help your leaders do their role well. And so for small group leaders, there's great tips and tools in there. All the small group leaders are going to get their own binder, and they're never going to look at the binder unless if you tell them to look at it. And so encourage them, hey, read through your job description, read through your what you need to know. Did you look at the small group tips and tools? There's a lot of gold in there. And so don't hesitate to actually look into the books and then utilize them in your meetings or recommend them, or even, if you want to, I can get a PDF for you and you can email it out and have a dialogue that way too. But I just wanted to set the tone. I just want to thank you for your time. I know there's a lot of things that you could be doing, but I felt like this was a great way to begin our year. And so I just want to close us in prayer, and then you guys, if you would, just be praying for our barbecue Q&A and our Mudfest this week, that they would be great events. And then the 4th is when we roll around and get started. So be watching your email. I'll be corresponding with you guys as we get ready for that, so you know what roles you'll have for those meetings coming up here next week. So Heavenly Father, thank you for this team. I just get pumped up. I get so excited and filled with energy when I hear each person sharing their personal passion that you've given them. And God, we want to accomplish much. We have huge goals that 1,700 students would be coming here weekly, that 650 would say yes to following you, that 2,000 would be in small groups. Those are unfathomable goals for me, God, but I believe you're going to do it this year. And we pray with expectation. And we just come here saying, God, we are ready and willing to serve. We're ready and willing to give our energy to say, here I am, send me. I'm willing. And so I just pray that you would use our openness and our willingness, that you would guide us as leaders, and you'd help us to always show our leaders how much they matter, how relevant they are, God, and help them see what the win is. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Well, thank you guys so much.